We've talked about them a little bit already, but in this video I want to talk about specifically Bootstrap buttons and how you can use the variety of classes that are available to style your buttons. Bootstrap provides custom button styles for actions and forms and dialogues and more, with support for multiple different sizes, states, and more. They're very easy to apply. They give your boring HTML buttons and links a much more updated design. All the styles that we talk about here can be used on anchor tags, button tags, or even input tags, and they work in all browsers. Now, you may know, if you've looked at buttons without any CSS applied, they are kind of ugly. So, for instance, if we look at what the buttons look like in the browser by default, here's an unstyled link, right? This is no CSS applied. There's a button with the button tag, and here's another button with the input tag, right? So that's kind of the vanilla version of those buttons. Now, this is what they look like in Chrome. The other thing to be aware of, though, with buttons is their default styling is very, very different from browser to browser to browser. Safari has a very different default look and feel for their buttons, as well as different versions of IE. Even across different versions of IE, buttons have looked different. So to really create a consistent style, I really do need to style my buttons. If you leave your buttons with the default browser style, it's very unlikely that in all browsers they will fit well with the rest of your theme. So they're a very important part to style. But unfortunately, also with using plain CSS, they're actually pretty hard to style because of all the differences in browsers. They're actually pretty hard to style out of the box. So this is absolutely a place where Bootstrap shines, because it wipes out a lot of those differences without you having to go try it on all the different versions of IE and Chrome and Opera and Firefox and Safari, and the list goes on. All of your buttons, if you're using the Bootstrap classes, whether they be anchor tags or inputs or buttons, they will all look the same. So here we have a variety of different looks or different colors, different styles for our buttons. Going from left to right, we have the primary, which is what we get with the primary class. We have the secondary color, which was what we get with the secondary class. We've got success, we've got danger, we've got warning, we've got info, and then finally we've got light and dark buttons. And then we can also, if we want to, we can have a button, whether it be a link or an anchor tag, or actually a link, a button tag, or an input tag. All of those we can actually make look like links if we want to. So if we use btn link, it will actually look like a link. We saw in the previous slide that we could apply all of these classes to links, and they would have all of these different styles. Also in this slide, you can see we can apply the exact same classes to buttons and get the same effect. There's also alternate versions of the buttons, namely the outline styling. So the regular version we might refer to as the solid, which you can see on the bottom. But if you use these classes, btn, outline, primary, btn, outline, secondary, etc., with that outline word in the middle, you get these outline buttons instead, where the color is on the text and the outline, but not initially on the button. Now, all of these outline buttons, if you hover over them, they actually will fill in with the primary color, and typically the text color will actually change to a contrasting color. So these can actually look really cool, and they work well as a sort of secondary button. If you have more than one button on your UI, or if you have places where it may not make sense to have a very bold, solid button, these outline styles can make for a really good look and feel. And now it's worth noting that there is no outline link, as the link is really a different styling. There is a button link, but there is no button outline link. You'll also notice that the button outline light looks really washed out, and that's because I'm putting this on a white background. On a darker background, that button outline link light would look a lot better. So let's look at button sizes. We can make larger buttons, we can make smaller buttons. We can do that using the btn large and btn sm classes. We add that in addition to the base btn and color classes. So for instance, here I have two large buttons, and both have btn and btn large, but one of them is btn primary and btn secondary. The regular size is without those classes, and then the small size of that button is with btn small. So I can make large buttons and I can make small buttons. So you can use those across your UI. Large buttons we usually use up in the Jumbotron, like we talked about in the previous video, and small buttons we may use in our UI for things like filters and maybe search buttons, things that are part of the UI but we maybe don't want to be as pronounced. Take up as much space, we mark those as buttons small. You can learn more about the buttons, about button classes and their specifics at the link here. That's the end of the video here, and I'll see you next time.